Hello, this is Braden Kelley of blogginginnovation.com here with John Hagel, co-chairman of Deloitte Center for the Edge. I just want to chat with you a bit about some of the key thinking that you've been working on over the last several years, and some of the thinking that you're collecting now for your new book called Pull.
Great.
First thing I'd like to get your thoughts on is you wrote a very interesting article about the difference between passion and obsession. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, I think we're increasingly becoming convinced that passion becomes critical to success in our profession. And we've been trained to believe that basically you go to work to earn a paycheck so that you can pursue your passion outside of your work. After hours. Just don't bring your passion into work. It's too disruptive, too unpredictable, too messy. And increasingly, because of the intensifying pressure, competitive pressure we're experiencing around the world, our belief is that if you don't really have passion around your work, you're going to become more and more marginalized and burnt out. You're just not going to have the energy that's required. If you're passionate about something, you actually seek out challenges. You don't try to flee from them. You seek them out. So our sense is that's critical. Now, one of the objections I would get when I talked about passion in work was, well, wait a minute, you know, I know a lot of people who are really obsessed and they've lost all track of anything else in their life, and they've just become totally absorbed by this one thing. And I think that it's really important to distinguish between passion and obsession. Some people say obsession is just a more extreme form of passion. I actually believe it's totally different. They're kind of at the opposite ends of the spectrum. Because what a passionate person is doing is trying to develop and achieve their full potential. They're really focused on themselves and how to develop more rapidly by pursuing a passion. And as part of that, to connect to other people who share their passion and build broader and deeper relationships with those people. So it's a very social kind of outcome in terms of building a real community around your passion. In contrast, if you're really obsessed with something, it becomes a mechanism to basically focus on something that's outside you as opposed to what's inside you and how to develop that potential. And one of the things you find for people who are really obsessed, one of the key red flags is this obsession or is this passion, are you starting to lose friends and family because you've become so absorbed by this one thing that you've lost any ability to really connect with other people, and you start to become even tedious in the sense that that's all you can talk about is your obsession. And so I think it's a pretty significant contrast, and I urge people to really think through the virtues of passion and the dangers of obsession. And what we're talking about is really the benefit of passion and how to connect with that much more effectively in your work environment, not just outside of work.
Okay, and well, definitely passion is very important to innovation, and that's one of the key things that we talk about here on the blog and in these videos. And another key thing in regards to innovation is that oftentimes it comes at the edge, and you write about the edge versus the fringe. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's again an interesting contrast. We call ourselves the Center for the Edge, in part because we believe that edges of various types are the real seed beds for innovation. And what we mean by edges, it can take many different forms. So you can have an edge that's a geographic edge. It's basically emerging economies relative to the core economies of Europe and the United States. It can be younger generations, demographic edges that are coming into the workplace, coming into the marketplace as consumers, but who have very different needs than older generation. You can think about it as edges in the sense of new generations of technology. But the bottom line is, what's interesting about edges is you get a kind of a perfect storm. On the one hand, where there's an edge, you're seeing unmet needs emerge, whether again it's emerging economies, new generations of consumers. So there's a set of emerging needs and often a set of unexploited capabilities. So you can really have a rich opportunity for innovation by connecting those capabilities with those unmet needs. The other thing is edges attract risk takers. You find people moving to the edge, those who are really passionate about something and who really want to challenge themselves and explore a new kind of opportunity. They're the ones who are out on the edge. The ones who are risk averse and wanting safety and security, they're back in the core. And so there's a real value in going out to the edge. Now, the challenge is that we make this distinction again between edges and fringes. And in our mind, what's really important here is edges over time have the potential to scale and really challenge and transform the core. Whereas a fringe stays a fringe. It stays a marginal event. It's never really going to amount to much. So you have to look at things like scalability. Is this something that can really scale, have the potential to really address the needs of a much larger population than just those who are on the edge? And issues around aspiration. In some cases on fringes, they define themselves in opposition to the core. They don't want to be part of the core ever. You know, they're satisfied, they're happy being on the fringe. So there are a whole set of factors you can look at to decide, is this a fringe or is this an edge? And if it's an edge, you better participate in that if you're a major business, because those edges are going to transform the core over time.
And definitely, and that's a good distinction. I think that's probably very helpful for people as they look at trying to expand into new markets or look for new opportunities. You also have a new book coming out that hasn't been quite released yet,
yes.
Called Pull. So could you tell us a little bit give us a sneak preview about the main thesis behind the book?
Sure. It's a sneak preview, and it's actually the power of pull. And what we're focused on in the book, it'll be coming out on April 13th, so just a few weeks away. Basically, the focus of the book is talking about the stress that we're increasingly feeling, both in our personal lives and our professional lives, as a result of intensifying competition, and in large part as a result of the disconnect between the fact that we entered into the world in a world of push. And we ended up with a set of practices and in a set of institutions that were optimized for push. And basically, push is all about forecasting and anticipating demand, and then making sure you've got all the right people and resources in the right place at the right time to meet that demand. Well, one source of stress is if that prediction and that forecast becomes less and less accurate. You have more of these black swans, as they're described, these extreme events, and just on a day-to-day basis, lots of fluctuations that you hadn't expected. So our sense is that increasingly that kind of world demands a pull approach, which basically focuses on how do you access the resources and people you need when you need them, as opposed to trying to forecast and making sure they're all in place. It's a much more flexible approach. We start with the notion of basic search, you know, the Google kind of on-demand access. I pose a question and very quickly I come up with an answer, find the right person to give me an answer. And that's important, but in our view, that's probably the simplest level of pull. There's a second level which becomes more interesting, which is the notion that in a rapidly changing world, you don't even know what question to ask anymore. You know, so what is the question? Who is it that I need to connect with in order to innovate and create new things? And in that kind of world, you need to focus on a second level of pull, which is about attraction, getting people and knowledge to connect to you in ways that you didn't expect. It's the whole notion of serendipity. But it's a different view in the sense that when I talk about serendipity to most people, they think about it as pure luck. You know, you basically it happens, and when it happens, the best thing you can do is be prepared for it, but it is pure luck. We have a bit of a contrarian view that says you can actually shape serendipity in some pretty significant ways that enable you to both increase the number of those unexpected encounters and the quality. And that's a pretty valuable set of practices to be able to master. And then you get to a third level of pull, which is the notion of pulling out of each of us our full potential, both as individuals and institutions. And it's about learning in a much more robust way than in the traditional educational programs or training programs that are, again, push-oriented, but create an environment where on demand you can start to learn about things that suddenly become very relevant to you using those first two levels of pull.
Right. Well, there you have it. Passion, edges, and the power of pull, all coming together to help drive innovation.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, John Hagel of the Deloitte Center for the Edge. And this has been Braden Kelley of blogginginnovation.com.